I saw a lot of stuff on like Instagram and stuff, and it was a couple pages on TikTok, not too many at the time when I started, but a majority of the content that I saw was showing introversion in like a more negative light. It was
Yeah.
associating it with
Yep.
not even necessarily negative, but also just things that it's not the same thing as introversion. So like shyness, like mental illness, and depression and things like that, which are all very real things. But there's not, you can't equate that with introversion. So I know for me, I've always been someone who, even though I am very much a listener, an observer, someone who thinks before he speaks, someone who loves his alone time. I'm also someone who's always been very confident in my abilities. So I wanted to just put a more empowering message out there for introverts. One thing I'll say too is that I actually, and I know you can relate, I actually get a lot of my socialization from using social media too. So even though I'm not necessarily going out, I'm talking to people online, whether it be on live or whether it be responding to comments and things like that. So social media is, for us introverts, I think is a great way to get some more socialization in and join an introvert community.
Welcome to Quiet Voice, Fearless Mind, a podcast where we help introverts and aspiring leaders to become who they want to be. My name is Terrence Lee, aka the Introvert Leader. Welcome to the show. So I am super excited today. Got a very special guest on. And before we get started, just want to jump into a little bit about how I know the guest. And so as many of you are aware that have been following me for a while, I'm pretty active on social media. And so a lot of times I'm looking at different pages of fellow introvert influencers, right? Or people that are talking about introversion. And I started to get active on TikTok, and I kept seeing this guy, Dre Savage. I kept seeing these videos, and they were hilarious. And they weren't just funny videos, but they were videos that literally, when I was watching them, it's like I was watching myself. And it was crazy. It's almost like he was in my head with some of the things he was doing. And so, started to follow him, and I've just been following him ever since. And I've just been so impressed with his consistency, with his content, with what he puts out there for the introvert community. So, with that said, I just want to welcome my guest, Dre Savage, to Quiet Voice, Fearless Mind. Dre, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you, Terrence, for the great introduction. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to dive in, and I'm definitely been inspired by a lot of your content. I've been following you for a long time, and I see the consistency in you as well, and the work ethic. And I'm just excited to just keep putting this message out there, both of us, and finding ways to collaborate and just keep spreading awareness about the introvert experience.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that, that's what's cool about it. It's always cool when you see someone else that's got like a similar mission and doing the same things, man. So yeah, love what you're doing, man.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So, we're gonna dive right in. So I guess my first question, Dre, is tell me a little bit about who is Dre Savage? Just in general, when you think about just who you are, where you are at this point in life, Dre Savage.
For sure, man. I mean, it's definitely a complicated question, because I can attach a lot of different labels to myself. Like I'm a writer, screenwriter. I write poetry, I write music. That's kind of where like I started off, just being creative, and then from there I got into filmmaking. And so in college I majored in film and TV, and I kind of learned about a lot of the craft. And from there I moved out to Hollywood in Los Angeles, and I started working in the entertainment industry, mostly behind the scenes. I worked on a lot of TV productions. I worked at some networks. I worked at some studios. So I have a lot of diverse experiences. And so from that, I started working as like a producer. And so I just picked up a lot of skills in terms of creating content. But at the time, I had nothing to do with social media. And so long story short, when I met my wife out in LA, she was someone who was very active on social media. She had a big platform there. She kind of just showed me how to post on a few of the apps. And right then and there, I saw the potential in social media. I saw that the freedom that she had in order to be able to just travel and do the things that she loved. So I said, let me take what I know about what I've learned in the film and TV industry, and let me see, how I can apply it to this social media thing. And so, yeah, when I first started out with social media, just like anyone else, I wasn't naturally good at it because it's still its own thing, So
Yeah.
I just dedicated myself to it. I said, I want to master this. And I knew that, it was an opportunity. I had learned from using Instagram that if you start early, you kind of have an advantage. The early bird gets the worm. So I started early on TikTok in my page. Yeah, I saw success right away. And that was kind of where I was first like, okay, let me start putting my face out there. Let's give this a try. My confidence was really high at that point. I knew I could do it. And long story short, this introvert thing, the introvert content, the reason I decided to choose that niche is because obviously it's who I am, it's who I've always been. But along like several years ago, I had started a blog specifically for introverts, and it was a comedy blog. And at the time, I was working my regular 9 to 5 gig, and I was torn because I really wanted to grow this comedy blog, but at the same time, my work was so consuming. And so yeah, the blog went for a while, but eventually I kind of let it go, but it always ate away at me. I'm like, man, I know this is something that people really need, so
Right.
making content on TikTok was sort of like my second go at it, And just the last thing I'll say on this is that when I had explored, like, okay, who's making introvert content right now, I saw a lot of stuff on like Instagram and stuff, and it was a couple pages on TikTok, not too many at the time when I started, but a majority of the content that I saw was showing introversion in like a more negative light. It was
Yeah.
associating it with
Yeah.
um, not even necessarily negative, but also just things that it's not the same thing as introversion. So like shyness, like mental illness, and depression and things like that, which are all very real things. But you there's not you can't equate that with introversion. So I know for me, I've always been someone who, even though I am very much a listener, an observer, someone who thinks before he speaks, someone who loves his alone time. I'm also someone who's always been very confident in my abilities. So I wanted to just put a more empowering message out there for introverts.
Introverts are too quiet and too weak to lead. Have you ever heard this before? Well, my name is Terrence, and for years as an introvert, I didn't think I had what it took to be a leader. What I learned was being an introvert is my superpower. If you want to learn how to have success as an introvert, then go to quietvoicefearlessleader.com to learn more. Absolutely, man. You said so much in that. Like, wow, there was some gold. But for those that are listening, I hope you caught a lot of that. And let me just say, say this. Your background, when you talk about being in film and being, just having that as a background, it definitely
Mhm.
shows up in your content. I mean, I'll
Thank
say
you.
one of the things that really caught my attention
Hmm.
was just the crispness and the level of detail and like the way that your content comes across, like
Thank you.
very catching. And so it definitely makes sense that that's your background. And I know that there's someone listening to this that hopefully is really inspired because when you talk about your blog, that really caught my attention. I know there have been times in my life where there's something that I started or
Hmm.
something that I knew I should be doing, and for
Hmm.
whatever reason I didn't pursue it or I didn't keep it going.
Hmm.
Haunted me. So I'm so happy for you, man, that you realize that, and you're showing that courage and you're pursuing your passions, pursuing your dreams. So like if
For
there's
sure.
something, and if you feel like you have something you want to do, and for whatever reason you're holding back, listen to Dre's story, right? I mean, he's someone with an introverted personality, but he's someone that is going after his dreams day in and day out. So that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that.
Definitely.
Yeah, so one thing I want to just introduce the topic. So I thought this would be very fitting, given that you're very influential on social media. I'm also an introvert on social media as well. And the notion that introverts are antisocial. And so my question for you would be, have you ever had somebody call you antisocial? Have you ever been considered antisocial? Or has anybody looked at you as quiet or shy or anything like that? Have you ever felt like any of those labels?
In terms of antisocial, I wouldn't say anyone so much called me that, but what I was very familiar with the word, and I will say that I did see it a lot associated with introversion, And at the time, I actually, when I first started to look into, well, what happened was somebody on one of my videos left a comment. It was one of my early videos, and I think I had maybe used the hashtag antisocial or something like that. And someone in my comments actually corrected me on that and educated me, and they said, "Hey, antisocial is not the same thing as introversion." And so I did a deeper research, and that's the thing. We're always learning too. You know,
Yeah.
this is new a lot of new terms for us. And so I did the research, and if I'm trying to remember exactly how I worded it, but antisocial is actually just like making an active effort to like isolate yourself from society, which is not really, that's not what introverts are. You know, we are just people who need that alone time to recharge. But yeah, growing up, I was called quiet. I was called chill. A few times, someone would be introducing me and just be, oh, he's a shy guy or whatever. And so that would kind of rub me the wrong way because it wasn't necessarily that I was shy. It was just that it takes me time to warm up to people. So yeah, just in general, like I was saying before, a lot of terms that are confused and thrown around. So I think we just need to take the time to do our research. And when we do see those terms being misused, we try to correct, the individual in a way that's, endearing.
So one question I have, and I'll be curious if you've ever had someone say this to you, since you've been just on social and, with your brand and everything.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people see introvert influencers online and they assume like, well, is that person really an introvert? They're on social media all the time. Are they really, an introvert? And so I'd be curious to ask you, what inspires you to be on social media? Like, what is it,
Mm-hmm.
your brand? And I think some of this you touched on a little earlier, but, as an introvert, what inspires you to be on social media the way you are? Because you go hard. Like, that's one
Yeah,
thing I'll
I
say.
do. I do.
That follows Dre on well, you'll see he puts a lot of content out, a lot of high quality content.
Thank you.
Inspires
Um,
you on social media.
For sure, no, great question. I definitely have gotten that comment a lot, and say, "Oh, introverts wouldn't post on social media," And at first, when I get those type of comments, I have to, before I quickly like react, and I have to take a step back and think, okay, there was a time, where earlier in my journey where I may have thought like that, So I understand where they're coming from because there's so much misinformation out there. People sometimes, they have those opinions, So first things first, what I'll say is like what I tell those people is first stop, don't put, you should never put a limit on yourself. So just because I say that I'm an introvert, that doesn't mean that I'm not capable of anything and everything that an extrovert can do, So it's like, do you want me to just, not put out content? Do you want me to sit and stare at a wall and not do anything? Like I'm trying to make a living for myself just like everyone else. So that's
Right.
one thing. Number two, I'll say is that when I'm great that I'm happy that I started out posting without my face, because what that taught me is that I just saw, because of all the feedback that I received so many messages from people saying like how much I had helped them or inspired them or made an impact. And so for me, I think a lot of people when they post on social media, or at least I can't speak for everyone, but I know they like it because they like to show what they're doing. They like to say I'm
Right.
here and I'm doing this, and that's never been my motivation for posting on social media. It has always been to help people, So when you see that you can make a difference in that way, that's all the more motivating of a, all the more of a reason that inspired me to use it, because I knew that that one post that I'm doing could reach someone and make a difference in their life, So that's what keeps me going is just helping other people, building other people up, building this community, building a safe space for introverts, and I'm sure you can relate to that.
Man, that's such a powerful answer right there, bro. I'm going to
Hmm.
tell you what I heard in your response was I heard purpose.
Hmm.
Like you got people on social, and I know this because I started Introvert Leader in November 2020, and I remember
Hmm.
a lot of people that started around the same time, and I would see pages go up, and within a few months, like they'd fizzle out, wouldn't post anymore, things like that. And I think so much of it is just tied to purpose.
Hmm.
Let's listen to this right now. If you're doing something and it's just because it's kind of hot for the moment, or it's the thing to do, or it's the trendy thing to do,
Exactly.
it's very hard to keep those things up.
Hmm.
But like just sitting here listening to you talk, I can tell from hearing you, you're passionate about helping. You're passionate
Hmm.
about spreading awareness about introversion and helping fellow introverts in that community. And I think that's why we connect so well because our purposes are so closely aligned because I feel the same way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're chasing after things and the pursuit is not tied to purpose, then usually it's only so long that can last, you know. Again, talking about being social and social situations and things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what would you say for you if you had to describe like a good social outing? You know, so we already know for like a lot of fellow introverts listening to this right now, a good social outing is probably not being in like a stadium full of people for 6 or 7 hours or something
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of us, you know. But for you, like, what does a good social outing look like? Because I do think that it's important that as introverts, we do get our alone time, right? We
Mm-hmm.
get our time to recharge. We need to have that time to ourselves and to our thoughts. But if we are going to be social, right, and in certain situations, what does a good like social situation look like for you?
That's a great question, and there's a lot of ways I can answer that. First I'll say that it is important as introverts. I know a lot of us are naturally homebodies, and so it is good. It's healthy to get outside. Sometimes you should never be cooped up 24/7 in your home. So a lot of times I'll try to get out, even if it's for a brief thing, to run an errand or do something like that. I try to make sure I get outside, get some fresh air. It just helps me to recharge. But for me specifically, it's kind of changed like over or as I've gotten older. I would say when I was younger, I did force myself to like try to go out, with extroverts, whether it was a some type of party or some type of like going to even a movie or like going to like a sports game or something like that. But I never truly like that's not something that I woke up and like, man, I want to do this thing. I've always
Right.
enjoyed very just low key, like private one-on-one type of scenario. So a lot of times, like I like if I do go out, I like going out with one friend because then I can really focus on that conversation, and we can bounce ideas back and forth and chat. So typically when you see me talk the most, it's like in scenarios like me and you are right now. It's one-on-one. That's where I really thrive. When it's a lot of people around, I just naturally just get quieter, and it's a lot to focus on and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say for me it's just a one-on-one, like grabbing something to eat. Like that's something I do now a lot with my wife. But yeah, anything that's not a lot of people, like I'm pretty much down for. So
So
yeah.
it's funny that you gave that definition.
Mhm.
I'm similar, like being a smaller circle.
For sure.
Especially as I'm getting older, I just really cherish like meaningful conversations, man. Like I enjoy conversations where we're thinking, we're talking about things with substance.
Hmm.
Really like as many of the surface level type conversations. I really like having deep dialogue with people and, just having those meaningful relationships, man.
For
So
sure, man. And it's interesting, like you said. It's I don't know what it is, but it's our we're always the ones being called out for being quiet. We don't go around saying, "Oh, I noticed you were very talkative today." So I
right.
don't know. I don't know. I guess that's just a thing. But one thing I'll say too is that I know you can relate. I actually get a lot of my socialization from using social media too. So even though I'm not necessarily going out, I'm talking to people online. Whether it be on live or whether it be responding to comments and things like that. So social media is for us introverts, I think, is a great way to get some more socialization in and join an introvert community. That's why we build these pages so you guys can join and in these. So yeah, I think that's another way you could look at it.
Absolutely. And that's, man, such a great tip for anyone that, is listening to this, that you're wondering how to socialize as an introvert, or maybe you're wanting to be social, but you're just trying to figure out like the best way to do it. Or maybe you don't like necessarily like networking and going out like that. What Dre says is that is so key is you can network online. You can
Mm-hmm.
socialize online. It's interesting, the past year or so, I've made a lot of relationships through social media.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing there's so many fellow introverts out there, like yourself, right? And that's how
Yeah.
we're connected. And I've connected with a lot of other people. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
anyone listening to this, if you feel like, you're struggling to be social, you want to make connections, you want to meet fellow introverts, we're definitely out there. So
Mm-hmm.
you to, yeah, just get connected on social media.
For
So
sure. And that's the thing. I actually, from just what I've just been observing and just through talking to more creators, I do feel like there are a lot of introverted content creators because you see these people online and you think they're like so talkative and things like that. But you got to remember, it's really just them in the room, like talking to a camera, So it's a when they're out in public, they're very reserved and quiet, and so I think there's a lot of us out there, and so I think if social media is a good, like if you want to be a content creator or social media manager or whatever it is, I think it's a good avenue for introverts to take, So it's a way to communicate with people without necessarily physically being there. So yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, man. So yeah, hey Dre, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate your time. I have one more question before
for
we
sure,
get off here, and the question is, who is Dre Savage becoming? So
for
earlier
sure,
we talked about who is Dre Savage, and so now when you think about where you are and you think about the future, who would you say that Dre Savage is becoming?
for sure. I would say Dre Savage is becoming someone who doesn't overthink. That's something that I struggle with my entire life is overthinking, and it stopped me from getting a lot of things done because I had the idea in my head, and I would kind of like we touched on earlier. I would start it and just stop it just because for whatever reason I didn't think it would be successful or just constantly overthinking things. So now when I get an idea, I just try to attack it right away and to just get the finished product and kind of build on it from that point, because an idea is just an idea, at the end of the day. It's the execution that really matters. So I pride myself on my execution now, being disciplined, being consistent. And so also I'm recently started a journey of entrepreneurship, so I'm taking my experience working in the film and television industry, and I recently launched my own TV streaming network for introverts. And so, what that is a place for anyone who's interested in seeing introverted and quiet folks as lead characters, in shows, movies, whatever. I'm going to have a different types of content on there, but that's a place where this business was important for me because growing up, I saw a lot of I guess the quiet characters being portrayed as crazy or as they didn't get a lot of exploration in TV shows. And always when I was watching the show growing up, I always wondered, like, if you've seen a show like I'm trying to think of an example, like for example, like Dexter, which is he's known as like an introverted character, and I really like that type of show. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, how come every type of character I see like this is always like a murderer, like a psycho or something like that? So I said, there's a different play on this, and so I wanted to explore that and show the full spectrum of being an introvert. Like, yes, there are a lot of difficulties that come with it, but there's also a lot of advantages, a lot of traits that we have that we can use to our advantage. So with this TV network, I want to not only be a place for me to put my own films on there, but a place for me to put the work and the content of other people. And so if you go over to Low Key TV, you can, like I said, watch some of my films. You can also watch the films of other people, and that's a way for us to just all come together, connect, and support one another, on that network. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on.
Yes, it's crazy that you say that because I remember when I was coming up and watching like different action movies and different things, and the lead character would always be this like super extroverted, outgoing type person, and that was like the hero. But
Hmm.
the person that was like quiet or had a different personality, like just like you said, they were like weird or portrayed a certain different kind of way. So the
Hmm.
fact that you're flipping the narrative
Exactly.
introverts and you're given a different perspective and a different view. I just think that's awesome. And so,
Thank you.
someone listening to this, for sure, we're going to have all the details in the show notes to go subscribe to Dre's network, Low Key TV. And then, yeah, Dre, let everyone know where they can follow you, follow the network, and everything like that.
For sure. So yeah, if you guys want to go check out my TV streaming network, head on over to lowkeytv.com. Very simple to remember. There's a 7-day free trial, so you could get the lay of the land first. And after that, right now it's just I believe $3.99 a month, which is like a cup of coffee. And that's just a way you guys can go and support. And aside from that, if you just want to follow just my regular content that I post, myself, you can head on over to Lowkey Savage. That's LOWKEYASAVAGE. and that's pretty much my handle across all my platforms. So on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. And I also just recently started my business page for Instagram. So that's Low Key TV Network. And you guys can go follow me on there. And I always respond to DMs. If you guys want to reach out and collaborate in some way, feel free to hit me up.
Awesome. Well, look, Dre, I appreciate your time. I appreciate this conversation. I think what you're doing is just so unique and it's so needed. Like, there are a lot of people that make content about introversion on social media, but not necessarily with a purpose. I feel like you're doing it with a purpose and with a mission. So I appreciate you and everything you're doing, man.
For sure. Likewise, Terrence. I think, just us sitting down and having these conversations is so important. It's building awareness. It's showing that introverts do talk. We do talk to each other. We do go live. We do all of those things. So what you're doing is so needed. And us introverts out there, we appreciate you.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, for everyone that's been listening, I hope you enjoyed the episode. This has been Quiet Voice, Fearless Mind with Dre Savage, and we'll talk to y'all next week. Peace.
All right, see you guys. Peace.